We're back for your ears only. I'm Eddie Robinson.
I'm David Alpern with this quote from the news. After the election, I will have more flexibility. That was President Obama on an accidentally open mic at the Seoul Summit on Nuclear Threats, asking Russian President Dmitry Medvedev for more time to work out a compromise on missile defense plans. Republican leaders quickly complained about a secret White House agenda. At the summit, Obama warned that too much nuclear material was still vulnerable to rogue groups and called on North Korea to scrap plans for a satellite launch that could also be a strategic missile test. Pyongyang refused. Now this.
Just because someone wears a hoodie does not make them a hoodlum. The Bible teaches us, Mr. Speaker, in the book of Micah 6:6-8,
the member will suspend.
These words,
I'm going to say it like I see it. Trayvon was hunted down like a rabid dog. He was shot in the street. He was racially profiled.
African-American Congressman Bobby Rush of Illinois was caught off for wearing a hoodie on the House floor last week in support of slain teenager Trayvon Martin. Congresswoman Frederica Wilson of Florida was even more pointed at a news conference outside. And Congressman John Conyers of Michigan was among other Democrats who organized a full-fledged congressional forum, though not an official hearing, on the role of the federal government and hate crimes.
In Sanford, Florida, meanwhile, more protests were organized to press for arrest of George Zimmerman, the neighborhood watch volunteer who followed an unarmed Martin against police advice, then shot him dead in what he claimed was self-defense under Florida's Stand Your Ground law. New police video shows Zimmerman handcuffed with no obvious signs of major struggle, but he was quickly released without charges. To consider the case and the larger issues of racial profiling, police prejudice, neighborhood watch rules, and Stand Your Ground, for your ears only, we have Dennis Parker, director of the American Civil Liberties Union Racial Justice Program and a witness at that Capitol Forum. Welcome.
Thank you.
Were you surprised to see Zimmerman in cuffs at the police station in that video? And does that support accounts that at least some cops initially assumed he would be arrested?
I was surprised for a couple of reasons. One, the one you give, that it shows that he was taken into custody, and clearly a decision was made after that to release him. And, of course, it also shows that he didn't suffer the type of physical injuries you'd expect for someone who claimed he had been beaten before he took the step of shooting Trayvon.
Part of your testimony focused on past cases in which the Sanford Police Department showed prejudice or favoritism when race was involved.
Right. There were a couple of incidents, one involving the shooting of a young black teen in the back by private security guards. The other involved the son of a member of the Sanford Police Department who beat up a homeless black man and was not charged with anything. And the video shows that it was an unprovoked attack. So it appears to be something that's happened more than once, where the police department has let go someone who is engaged in very violent and unprovoked conduct.
Is it reasonable for investigators in this case to determine if police knew that Zimmerman's father is a retired judge and if that played any role in the way they treated him after that video we saw of him in cuffs?
I think fairness requires that the investigation cover every possible aspect of the case, including that. Anything that shows that the decision to release Zimmerman wasn't based on the facts but based on his connections or police bias or any number of other things that would deny Trayvon his rights.
The FBI is investigating Zimmerman's comments to see if Martin's race, not his hoodie, was the motivating factor for suspicion. If so, could this killing be classified as a hate crime, even if Zimmerman was not otherwise an obvious racist?
Yes, I mean, the point of the hate crime legislation is to create, to make it a separate crime to target someone because of their race or ethnicity or other protected categories. So it really doesn't matter whether or not, you don't have to prove the person is a racist. And in fact, the only important thing is whether the person acts in a way because of the person's race.
We know Zimmerman ignored police by following Martin, and we know that he had a license to carry a concealed weapon. But is being armed usual for Citizens Watch volunteers or a violation of the terms under which most of them operate?
Absolutely not. In fact, all Citizens Watch programs forbid the carrying of weapons.
If charges are finally brought against Zimmerman, some say that ignoring the police to follow Martin should rule out his protection under Stand Your Ground, even if Martin did finally turn on him. Even one of the law's initial sponsors says it's misapplied here. What's your view on that law and such laws in general?
Well, I think, there are really two questions there. One is whether or not it's properly invoked here, and I think, certainly the evidence that I've heard is that he did pursue him after being told not to. The Stand Your Ground law, as it's written, is supposed to say that you don't need to retreat, which is the standard common law requirement. So this is not a question of his not retreating, but his actually chasing someone. But the larger question is really whether or not these laws are a good thing. And I think that there are a lot of reasons to be very concerned about them. There's been an increase in the number of shootings where people invoke the law and where people have ultimately gotten off because of it. I think that they're really problematic. They've been described as a shoot first, ask questions later law, and I think that there's a lot of real fear that these kinds of laws may increase the number of unjustified shootings.
You testified in support of the End Racial Profiling Act. What kind of behavior and by whom would it cover? Well,
the Act specifically covers federal agents, and it covers all federal law enforcement agents. It requires training, and it creates the possibility of getting court relief to make sure that it is complied with. But it's important because it also permits the federal government to require that any states getting federal funding keep the sort of data about police activities that can determine whether or not racial profiling is going on by state enforcement actors. It can also it would also create funding so that the federal government could fund states to put into place programs designed to reduce racial profiling.
You also called for strengthening the Department of Justice guidance regarding the use of race by federal law enforcement. What would that entail?
There are three things that we were concerned about with the guidance as it exists now. And the first one is that it exempts certain law enforcement activities such as border security and national security. And, we fear that these things that actions may take place under those circumstances that should be covered by the Act or by the guidelines and are not. The second thing is that it's limited in that it doesn't cover religion or national origin, and that's an area where we see increasing racial profiling. So we think it needs to be included in the guidelines.
Does the word hoodie have to be put into the law so that attire can't be used as an excuse?
Well, certainly, it is incredible that we'd be having a discussion about whether or not it's someone's fault because of what they wear that they were attacked and killed.
Dennis Parker is director of the American Civil Liberties Union Racial Justice Program and a witness at the Capitol Forum.
Quote from the news, the regime pretended that they agreed, but what happened? That was Syrian National Council member Walid Banani on continuing Syrian government violence after President Bashar al-Assad's okay to a ceasefire and peace plan backed by Arab nations and the UN. Continued rebel killing of high-ranking army officers also threatened to keep the peace plan stalled.
Next, threats to the privacy of life online for your ears only.